Hey guys and girls, Poketin King here, back with another Flesh and Blood video. And today we're going to talk about a question that I've wanted to do a video on for a little while, but I did ask it in a recent video I did with Transient. If you haven't checked out Transient TCG's video, we did a podcast as his first episode. The second episode was with Rob from PCG Graydon, who the question was answered by, and it was, if Flesh and Blood came out in 2024, would it be as successful? So I think that's a really good question, not just because I asked it myself, but I think there's so many different answers to that. And I wanted to make a video about it because I think it's a big enough topic to talk about. If Flesh and Blood came out in 2024, right now, would we see the same success as we have done in the past 5 years? Obviously, a lot of card games have come out over the last few years. When Flesh and Blood came out, obviously the competition was, games like Magic. You had other games that have popped up, like Genesis on its first trial run, as well as obviously the big name ones, Pokemon and Digimon and stuff like that. It actually might have been before Digimon. So there was actually less competition in terms of these big games. Now we've seen One Piece, we've seen all the Bandai TCGs come out. We've obviously seen Star Wars Unlimited, Lorcana come out as well. And loads of Kickstarter card games like Sorcery, Altered has come out, Grand Archive. So there is a lot out there. There's a lot of competition. So if Flesh and Blood hadn't established itself in the market prior to these coming out, aka coming out in 2024, would it perform as well? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I think there's a lot of factors to play at this. I think the way that Flesh and Blood released was very different. It isn't a Kickstarter card game like a lot of them. We had MetaZoo, we've had Akora, we've had all these Cryptic. All these other games come out since, and a lot of them have failed, that came through Kickstarter. Flesh and Blood came through the more traditional route of raising funds themselves to, set up the company and obviously bring out this game. As well as the fact that the lore was, they'd created the lore years before, and it had been a project that had been worked on for many years before. It wasn't a flash in the pan, right, TCGs are getting big, that's try sell something. Because, TCGs weren't in their boom phase again back in 2019. Obviously, some games were doing really well, but, it wasn't the levels we had in 2020 and 2021. Obviously, the pandemic and such. So if it came out in 2024, I actually think it wouldn't be the same success. I think to emulate the conditions that they had would be impossible. I think all the conditions that happened were the reason why, part of the reason why the game's done good. There's a lot of games that come out that have great art, a great company behind them, the gameplay's great, but the game doesn't work. And various reasons why, it just doesn't get out there, doesn't get marketed properly. But with Flesh and Blood, obviously the core bit is getting people to play the game. The playability obviously is a huge part of it. It's an extremely competitive card game. It is one of the best out there right now to play. A lot of people have come from Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic over to Flesh and Blood because of how competitive it is. And that's why, the game does so well, not only in Europe, but the US and Southeast Asia as well. And we're starting to see some focus on, Mexico and Latin America and stuff. But I don't think it would do as well. The reason why Flesh and Blood did so well, honestly, was 2019 was a perfect year to come out. There, as I said earlier, there was less competition. I think if it came out now and tried to battle against Lorcana, One Piece, Star Wars Unlimited, you've obviously got Uni Arena come out, you've got Sorcery. Each one of those takes a market share away. Now, the average card game player does play more than one card game, but there usually is one that's the main focus. I think if Flesh and Blood came out now, too many people just wouldn't simply give it a chance. They wouldn't try it. Just because they're probably saturated with the card games that they're already invested in and they collect and they play already, that they just probably wouldn't be able to give the time to a game like Flesh and Blood. Remember, Flesh and Blood is a niche. It's not a huge company and it's not a huge IP. So when you have neither of those, it is hard. You see all these card games coming out now and they don't last very long. There's so many card games out there right now and you probably don't even know most of them. And you probably never will hear about most of them. There'll be these small communities that collect or play, but for the most part, they're never going to get on the grand, stage. You look at what Fab's done over the last 5 years. It's been printed, you know, started in English. It's been printed in, you know, a lot of European language, French, Italian, German, Spanish. Now we've got Japanese. You know, the potential for more languages could happen in the future. But I know that, you know, the expansion they're doing is because they've got the money to be able to do that. They've got the money to be able to push into doing more events now. We're seeing them this year. There's been a huge presence at things like UK Games Expo, Gamma. They're going to the big one in Germany, I think Svilla. I'm sorry if I've actually butchered that name. And then there's, you know, other events as well. I think Gamescom as well they're going to be at, and they've got the First Strike decks as well as the IRA. But the game is very different right now, and I talk about TCGs in general. I think TCG space looks very different right now than it did before. We've gone from this big boom 10Ds time in TCGs. Flesh and Blood had it, you know, the first few sets around that Monarch era, that Everfest, and then it kind of died down a little bit. We've gone through 3 phases of Fab 1.0, 2.0, and, you know, most likely we're in Fab 3.0 now. I think the game would struggle. Now, I'm not saying the game wouldn't work, but I think if it came out in November this year or October this year, and then I'm looking at it in 2029, I don't think the place that it's at right now would be the same as it would be in 5 years if it came out this year. I don't see that happening. I think the conditions that Fab had was almost perfect. Now, obviously, the pandemic happening didn't help with the playability side of it. It did help with the the early investor collector, because that started rifling up in 2020. I remember when I entered the game when Crucible of War First Edition came out, and things just started changing rapidly. Prices were going up, everything was going mental, well into the Monarch set, and obviously Tales of Aria and Everfest. And things were very different. I didn't think we would have that same thing. You know, you see a lot of these games come out right now. You look at Star Wars Unlimited. The first set came out, that did really well. Second set's come out, tumbleweed. Barely anyone's talking about it. The singles market has absolutely crashed on that. And a lot of people are selling off, see, their Hyperspace Showcase leaders, because they're like, this game has obviously announced the next 4 sets. So we know what's going to come out in next December. We know the name of the set. But the print, coupled with the print runs and the fact that, you know, it is Fantasy Flight Games as well. You know, there's a lot of things that people are doubting. The same reasons why people were doubting One Piece because of Bandai. That is the downside of these big companies, is that sometimes the faith isn't there. But it's a huge IP, so it gets people interested from the get-go. They've got the huge budget to market. One of the things that, you know, is fairly well known and, you know, known throughout business is you'll never be able to go toe-to-toe with these massive corporations in marketing. Their budget is just huge. So a game like Flesh and Blood could not do that. And it is relying on that word of mouth, which, you know, other games don't necessarily have to worry too much about. They come out, they go, right, we're making a new Star Wars card game. People were talking about it for ages. Lorcana, when it came out, people were talking about it for a year before because they did the D23 promos. And people were really excited about that. That's another game that first few sets came out, it went mad. Everything was going mental. And then we've had this huge dip now. The supply is out there. You know, obviously Ravensburger, you know, it's their first TCG, but they did say that we are going to print a lot of this. So now you're seeing a dip with them. I think that we wouldn't even get to the point where we could get a dip with Flesh and Blood. And that's not to say the game isn't great. If you're watching this content, you know that most of my content is Flesh and Blood based. I absolutely love the game. I think it is the best card game out there right now. However, it's all well and good having the best coffee, but if the coffee shop next door is marketing better, maybe their coffee is cheaper, people are most likely going to try there rather than your coffee shop. So, you know, it's not that you don't have a good product here, because we clearly obviously do, but are people going to try it? You know, I know people who are very talented in the fields that they are in. I know people that write articles that are really talented. I read their stuff and go, do you know what? This is really good. But they're like, I haven't got a job in that field yet. Well, why? Well, you know, I think my articles are good. The articles isn't the issue. No one's reading it because no one's getting it out there. And that's the problem with Flesh and Blood. If the game came out right now in 2024, Do you think stores would give it a chance? No, I don't think they would. I think the amount of card games that have come over the last few years that we've crashed and burned, the amount of stores that I spoke to, because of Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Masters are, that was the one before Fusion World. Obviously now it's kind of gone back to it. That game, went mental, and then it died like that. Overnight, it just disappeared. And the amount of stores that I've spoken to told me they wouldn't touch another Bandai TCG because of that. And that's why they were so hesitant with One Piece. Now, obviously, One Piece has proven to be a huge... Obviously, it's one of the biggest IPs out there. And it is a huge mammoth of a TCG that, we've got OPO 9 announced, and we've obviously had the PBR 1, and we've had the extra booster. So, basically, that's 11 sets right now. They are just churning them out quickly. That's what Bandai do. It remains to be seen whether they'll keep that alive when Union Arena comes out. But, these big... it starts from the get-go where distribution will be alerted, right, so-and-so big company, billions and billions, millions and millions, they're creating a new card game. Distros will get that. Then they'll send out a newsletter to the stores, go, right, new card game from, Bandai, and everyone will be like, oh, okay, all right. Or new Star Wars, new Disney TCG. It's a big IP. It's going to get people through the door. There's a huge buyer pool and player pool for these TCGs. Flesh and Blood is a 16 plus TCG that is... The mechanics of the game are quite difficult to grasp for a lot of people. They say the game is easy to learn, but extremely hard to master. As somebody who played Yu-Gi-Oh! As a kid, until I was about 13, I played competitively. Until I was about 13, then I stopped. And I didn't play any card games until, I'm 28. I don't think Flesh and Blood was an easy game to grasp. I tried it before and I couldn't get into it. And I still collected it, but it was the second time round where I got into it. And even then, I needed to have a good group of people around me that were willing to put the time in to help me. Now, I don't even think we'd get there with Flesh and Blood if it came out in 2024. Obviously, it's going to be a conversation that a lot of people are going to have their opinions on. Now, as I've said clearly, this is no means me saying the game isn't good. Because there's going to be people that are going to get their keyboards out now, and they're going, right, what's he saying about Flesh and Blood? Why is he saying our game isn't great? That's not what I'm saying. Read the room. My content is Flesh and Blood based. But if people don't try it, which I don't think they would, the amount of stores that would even take it on, and then you've got this thing where it's like, right, stores got to take it on. Okay, cool. Put on a shelf. Oh, what's that? Oh, that's Flesh and Blood. Oh, what's that about? I don't know, to be honest. Boss got it in. He said it's a new game. Oh, okay, don't worry about it. Versus a store going, right, oh, okay, we got Flesh and Blood in. Right, Tuesday nights, we're going to start doing armories. We've got armory kits, we've got prize support, all this. This guy says he's learnt to play. He's been following the game since it's come out. He's going to teach people how to play. We're going to really push people into it. And that's the difference. And I guess that's the difference, really, between the game existing now. You look at a lot of the markets around the world, the game is stagnant. It isn't growing everywhere in the world. That is a reality check. Your local scene might be really great, but the city next to you, which is a 4-hour drive, they've got 0 store supporting it. They've got 0 players. And that's the thing. You might have it very condensed where you have, oh, do you know what? We've got 22 turn up for our armory at the moment. We've got huge numbers. But the armory that was successful before in another city, that's dead. So, that's the story across the world right now that I am hearing. Across Europe, UK, USA, that is the thing. Because it has been very much focused on the expansion in Southeast Asia. We've just heard Mexico is coming out. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Obviously, let me know in the comments below. This is always one of those topics where it's going to cause debate. There's going to be people that have listened to what I've said and understand what I say, and they'll have their opinion and they might not agree with me, which is absolutely fine. Just watch the whole video. I mean, if you're here right now listening to me just absolute yapper on, you've probably understood it. I hope anyway. I know there's some dense people out there that just don't get it. But thanks all for watching. As always, please comment, like, and subscribe. Hit the notification button. We do have YouTube memberships. I have 4 members now, which is, 4 more than I had a few months ago. So really appreciate those that have joined as members. There'll be some member exclusive content. Videos will be coming out earlier. I'll try to do content a day earlier now. Bar the Friday night TCG talks, a lot of content will come out a day before for members. So if you want to get that exclusive content before anybody else, hit that membership button. And as always, have a great day.